In the year 1931, an engineer named Carl Jansky pointed a massive antenna toward the sky and captured a frequency that was never meant to be heard by human ears. He intercepted a rhythmic, unexplainable radio signal broadcasting directly from the exact center of the Milky Way galaxy. The official historical records state that it was merely cosmic noise, a natural byproduct of interstellar gas and stellar radiation. Yet one must question the quiet consensus that followed in the academic community. Did the scientific elite realize, nearly a full century ago, that an entity defying all physical logic resided in that exact location? Did they consciously choose to encode this terrifying anomaly behind harmless astronomical terminology to prevent mass existential dread? We have been conditioned from childhood to gaze into the night sky and perceive a peaceful, empty void. That comforting narrative is a complete fabrication. The core of our galaxy is not a serene expanse of nothingness, nor is it a graceful, swirling vortex of pure energy. It is a physical, monstrous remnant of a dead star. It is an object of absolute, unyielding density that sits in total silence, methodically shaping the boundaries of our physical reality and trapping everything that dares to come close. Welcome to Dozing Universe. You are about to step into a space where the comforting illusions of the cosmos are dismantled piece by piece. Subscribe to our channel and walk with us into the profound unknown as we uncover the cold, undeniable truths hidden within the deepest shadows of space. The term black hole is a linguistic failure, a profound misnomer that has safely insulated the human mind from the terrifying physical reality of these objects. The word hole implies an absence, a puncture in the canvas of reality, an empty drain leading to nowhere. But this entity is the exact opposite of emptiness. It is the ultimate manifestation of physical presence. It is matter crushed into a state of such incomprehensible density that it breaks the mathematical foundations of the universe. To understand what is lurking in the dark, one must first strip away the cartoonish depictions of cosmic whirlpools. You are not looking at a void. You are looking at a corpse. A hypercondensed tomb of a dead giant. Consider the lifespan of a colossal star, a celestial titan burning with the fury of millions of nuclear detonations every passing second. For millions of years, this star exists in a state of violent, precarious equilibrium. Deep within its core, nuclear fusion acts as a relentless outward force, generating immense pressure that pushes against the crushing weight of the star's own outer layers. Gravity, the most persistent and patient force in the cosmos, pulls inward. As long as the star has atomic fuel to burn, fusing hydrogen into helium, then helium into carbon, and all the way down the periodic table to iron, the outward pressure holds gravity at bay. It is a stalemate of cosmic proportions. But iron is the harbinger of death. The fusion of iron absorbs energy rather than releasing it. The outward pressure plummets. In an instant, the stalemate is broken. Gravity, having waited for eons, wins absolute victory. The collapse is instantaneous and utterly catastrophic. The entire mass of the star's core, an amount of matter equivalent to several of our suns, plummets inward at a significant fraction of the speed of light. There is no force left in nature capable of halting this implosion. The atomic structure itself shatters. Electrons are violently crushed into protons, creating a densely packed ball of neutrons, but even this degenerate neutron pressure is entirely insufficient. The collapse continues, pushing past the breaking point of quantum mechanics, shrinking a mass greater than entire solar systems down to the size of a city, then a pinpoint, and finally, into a geometric point of zero volume and infinite density, a singularity. This apocalyptic mechanism was not discovered by looking through a telescope. It was uncovered on paper, in the quiet shadows of mathematical abstraction, long before any human eye could verify its existence. In the late summer of 1939, a brilliant physicist named J. Robert Oppenheimer, alongside his student Hartland Snyder, published a paper titled On Continued Gravitational Contraction. On the very same day that human civilization was plunging into the mechanized slaughter of the Second World War, Oppenheimer had just mathematically proven the existence of ultimate physical annihilation. He demonstrated that once a star of sufficient mass exhausts its thermal energy, no physical law can prevent it from contracting endlessly. The academic community of the era largely ignored or dismissed the paper. The concept of an infinitely collapsing object was considered too absurd, too ugly for the elegant rules of nature. It was easier to believe that the mathematics had produced a mere artifact, an anomaly that reality would somehow prevent. Yet, the equations were flawless. Oppenheimer had outlined the exact mechanism of a star digging its own gravitational grave and pulling the surrounding fabric of space-time down with it. The gravity generated by this infinitely dense core is so profound that it distorts the very geometry of the space surrounding it. Space itself flows inward, dragging everything along. To understand this, one must discard the Newtonian idea of gravity as a simple, invisible tether. According to the framework established by general relativity, gravity is the curvature of space-time itself. A massive object bends the environment around it, much like a heavy steel sphere resting on a stretched rubber sheet. Now, envision that sphere shrinking to an infinitely small dot while retaining all of its immense weight. The rubber sheet is pulled down into an infinitely deep shear funnel. The curvature becomes extreme, violently warping the trajectory of anything passing nearby. This brings us to the behavior of light in the presence of such an entity. Light rays, traveling in straight lines through empty space, are forced to follow the severely bent topography of this warped space-time. If a beam of light passes at a safe distance, its path is merely deflected, acting as a cosmic magnifying glass that distorts the image of stars behind it, a phenomenon known as gravitational lensing. Move closer to a specific orbital boundary, and space is curved so severely that photons of light are caught in a circular path. They orbit the dead star continuously. In this region, if one were to look straight ahead, the light from the back of one's own head would orbit the entity and hit their eyes. It is an optical house of mirrors built by pure gravity. But as the density of the collapsed core approaches infinity, the inward flow of space-time accelerates even further, eventually surpassing a critical threshold. The escape velocity, the speed required to break free from the gravitational grip, climbs exponentially. At a precise distance from the singularity, this required speed exceeds the absolute speed limit of the universe. Since the fundamental laws of physics dictate that no signal, no particle, and no information can travel faster than light, nothing can escape. The boundary where the escape velocity exactly equals the speed of light is the event horizon. It is a one-way membrane. Any light ray that crosses this threshold is violently pulled inward, never to be reflected or seen again. Therefore, the object is completely invisible. It absorbs all radiation, all illumination, leaving behind a sphere of perfect, absolute darkness. It is a hypermassive, silent predator cloaked in an impenetrable shadow of its own making. The darkness is not an absence of light, it is the physical imprisonment of light. It sits there, a cold, hard fact of astrophysics, an invisible sphere of trapped history. Every atom, every photon, every stray asteroid that has ever crossed its boundary is still in there, compressed into a state of non-existence. This redefines the fundamental nature of observation. We are so accustomed to learning about the universe by collecting light, by analyzing the electromagnetic signatures of distant worlds. But here the universe presents an entity that actively consumes the very medium of observation. It is a physical object that enforces absolute silence, refusing to yield a single photon of data about its internal state. The chilling reality is that such objects do not merely exist as mathematical oddities in a chalkboard equation. They are physical certainties, born from the violent deaths of giant stars, and they command a gravitational authority that dictates the architecture of the cosmos. To fully grasp the proximity of this cosmic reality, one must direct their focus away from the isolated periphery of our solar system and look inward, piercing through the dense, chaotic dust lanes that obscure the true heart of our galactic neighborhood. Located in the direction of the constellation Sagittarius, roughly 26,000 light-years away from our current position, lies the dynamic and crowded center of the Milky Way. For centuries, this region was shrouded in an impenetrable veil of interstellar gas and cosmic dust, rendering visible light observations completely useless and keeping humanity entirely ignorant of the architecture governing our galaxy. It was only when technology advanced to capture infrared and radio frequencies that the veil was lifted, revealing a nuclear star cluster where millions of ancient, massive stars are packed together in an environment of extreme radiation and violent kinetic energy. Yet, the most profound discovery was not the brilliant illumination of this stellar metropolis, but rather a terrifying void situated at the very exact geometric center of all this chaos. By meticulously tracking the movements of a specific group of high-velocity stars deep within this cluster over a period of several decades, researchers observed a kinetic anomaly that defied all conventional astrophysics. These immense, blazing stars were not drifting aimlessly. They were being violently whipped around a single, unseen focal point. One star in particular was observed approached this central region at a speed exceeding 15 million miles per hour, executing a sharp, hairpin turn around an area of space that appeared completely empty, and then being violently slung back out into the cluster. According to the strict laws of orbital mechanics established by Johannes Kepler and Isaac Newton, the speed and trajectory of an orbiting body provide a flawless mathematical blueprint of the mass it is orbiting. When the calculations were applied to these frantic stellar movements, the result was a number so staggering it forced a paradigm shift in modern astronomy. The invisible entity anchoring these stars possessed a mass equivalent to 4 million of our suns. Furthermore, the orbital paths dictated that this incomprehensible mass had to be crammed into a spherical volume no larger than our own solar system. There is only one mechanism in the entire known universe capable of compressing 4 million solar masses into such a confined physical boundary without triggering a catastrophic thermonuclear explosion that would rip the region apart. It is a supermassive black hole, designated as Sagittarius A star. This monstrous entity is not an abstract concept or a distant mathematical probability. It is a physical, localized anchor dictating the gravitational flow of our entire galaxy. We are bound to it. However, the most chilling characteristic of Sagittarius A star is not its immense mass, but its current state of absolute, unnatural silence. Throughout the cosmos, many supermassive black holes act as active galactic nuclei, aggressively consuming vast oceans of stellar gas and violently ripping apart entire star systems. As matter spirals inward toward the event horizon of these active giants, it forms a blazing accretion disk of superheated plasma, generating friction so intense that it outshines the combined light of every star in their host galaxies. They blast colossal jets of relativistic radiation millions of light years into the void, sterilizing everything in their path. Sagittarius A star, by contrast, is doing none of this. It sits in the dark, virtually undetectable, operating at a luminosity level billions of times lower than what it is theoretically capable of producing. It is a starving predator, currently existing in a deep, prolonged state of cosmic hibernation. It consumes only a meager trickle of interstellar winds and stray asteroids, barely enough to produce a faint radio whisper. This profound quiet provides a false sense of security, an illusion of stability that humanity has comfortably accepted. The distance of 26,000 light-years is frequently cited as a vast, insurmountable buffer, a protective ocean of space that guarantees our absolute safety from the gravitational crushing forces of the galactic core. But on a cosmic scale, 26,000 light-years is merely our immediate neighborhood. We share the same gravitational ecosystem. The hibernation of Sagittarius A star is not a permanent state. It is a temporary, fragile equilibrium dependent entirely on the random distribution of matter in its immediate vicinity. The environment surrounding this dormant giant is highly volatile, populated by massive molecular clouds and rogue star systems whose trajectories are constantly shifting due to the chaotic gravitational interactions of the nuclear star cluster. A single gravitational perturbation, a slight nudge from a passing cluster, or the inward migration of a dense cloud of cold gas could easily alter the current balance. If a substantial source of matter were to be pushed into the gravitational well of Sagittarius A star, the hibernation would end abruptly. The entity would awaken, reigniting its dormant accretion disk and transforming the center of our galaxy into a blinding, lethal engine of high-energy X-rays and gamma radiation. The resulting shock waves of energy would violently alter the galactic environment, altering the process of star formation and potentially stripping the atmospheres of planets caught in the extended line of fire. We reside on a fragile, rocky outpost, tethered to the gravitational influence of a sleeping titan that holds 4 million times the mass of our Sun, trusting naively that the cosmic winds will never shift to awaken the entity that patiently waits in the dark. The descent toward the event horizon is governed by mechanics that dismantle the fundamental assumptions of everyday physics. In a standard planetary environment, an object in freefall experiences a uniform state of acceleration. Every atom within a structure, whether it is a falling spacecraft or a human body, accelerates toward the mass of the planet at a relatively equal rate. This uniformity creates the sensation of weightlessness. The local gravitational field is broad and gentle enough that the difference in gravitational pull between the top of an object and the bottom is statistically insignificant. A person falling toward the Earth does not feel the planet pulling their feet faster than their head. However, the gravitational architecture surrounding a black hole does not operate on gentle curves. It is an extreme, violent funnel in the fabric of space-time. As an object transitions from a distant orbit and begins a direct trajectory toward the singularity, it crosses a threshold where the macroscopic rules of gravity give way to intense, localized gravitational gradients. This gradient is the root cause of the mechanical destruction that awaits any physical structure. The force of gravity dictates that attraction is inversely proportional to the square of the distance between two masses. Simply stated, the closer one gets to a massive object, the stronger the pull becomes. But the strength of that pull increases exponentially, not linearly. When approaching a singularity, this exponential increase occurs over microscopic distances. If an object is oriented radially, falling feet first toward the center of the black hole, the physical distance between the lower extremities and the singularity is marginally less than the distance between the upper extremities and the singularity. In the vicinity of a normal celestial body, this distance discrepancy produces a negligible difference in acceleration. In the immediate proximity of a black hole, this microscopic distance translates into a massive discrepancy in gravitational force. The feet are accelerated inward at a velocity significantly higher than the head. The structure is subjected to a profound pulling effect, a phenomenon astrophysicists refer to as tidal forces. The term originates from the way the gravity of our moon pulls on the Earth, stretching the oceans to create high and low tides. Near the event horizon, these tidal forces are magnified to an apocalyptic degree. The internal structure of the falling object must now contend with two opposing realities. The chemical bonds, the electromagnetic forces that hold molecules together, strive to maintain the structural integrity and shape of the object. Simultaneously, the extreme gravitational gradient attempts to pull the object apart by accelerating its lower half faster than its upper half. This mechanical conflict is inherently unwinnable for normal matter. Every material in the universe possesses a specific tensile strength, a maximum threshold of stress it can endure before the bonds between its atoms fail. As the object falls deeper into the gravitational well, the tidal forces rise on an exponential curve. It is a matter of pure, inescapable mathematics. Eventually, the difference in gravitational acceleration across the length of the object will exceed the electromagnetic forces binding its molecules. The initial stage of structural failure is silent and absolute. A spacecraft would not simply crumple, it would be violently elongated. The metallic hull would shear, and structural supports would snap as the front of the vessel is ripped away from the rear. For a biological organism, the process is equally mechanical. The tensile strength of bone and connective tissue is vastly insufficient to counteract the extreme gravity differential. The skeletal structure would fracture and separate, followed immediately by the tearing of muscular and cellular tissue. The body is forcibly stretched into a long, thin cylinder. This violent elongation is universally documented in astrophysics as spaghettification, a term that masks the brutal, shredding reality of the physical process. Yet, the vertical stretching is only half of the mechanical destruction. As the tidal forces elongate the object along the axis of its fall, another geometric consequence of the warped space-time environment begins to crush it from the sides. The gravitational field of a black hole does not pull objects downward in parallel lines, like rain falling on a flat plane. Instead, all lines of gravitational force converge at a single, infinitely small point in the center, the singularity. Because every atom of the falling object is being pulled toward that exact central coordinate, the left side of the object is pulled slightly to the right, and the right side is pulled slightly to the left. The object is subjected to an extreme horizontal compression that operates simultaneously with the vertical elongation. The physical structure is being pulled like a thread and crushed like a vice at the exact same moment. As the descent continues and the object approaches the absolute boundary of the event horizon, the gradient becomes so severe that macroscopic destruction transitions into microscopic annihilation. The destruction does not stop when the object is torn into fragments. The tidal forces continue to operate on the fragments themselves, applying the same differential acceleration across ever smaller distances. The separated pieces of metal, bone, or tissue are stretched and crushed again. This recursive process of division and elongation cascades down the scale of physical existence. Soon the differential gravity across a single biological cell exceeds the forces holding its membrane together, tearing the cell into a stream of individual molecules. The descent pushes the physical matter past the limits of chemistry. The molecular bonds, the sharing of electrons that create complex compounds, are severed by the relentless gradient. Complex proteins, water molecules, and metallic alloys are dismantled into their constituent atoms. But the geometric funnel of the black hole demands further reduction. As the stream of disconnected atoms nears the mathematical threshold of no return, The gravity differential across the diameter of a single atom becomes greater than the strong nuclear force binding the nucleus and the electromagnetic force holding the electrons in orbit. The atoms themselves are violently stretched and stripped apart. The electrons are torn away from the protons, creating a hyper-elongated stream of ionized plasma. The fundamental building blocks of matter are forced into a single-file line of subatomic particles. Before an object even reaches the proximity where this ultimate spaghettification initiates, it must navigate the surrounding environment of the gravitational well. For a black hole actively consuming matter, this region is dominated by an accretion disk, a vast structure of superheated plasma spiraling inward at relativistic speeds. The sheer kinetic energy generated by the friction of matter colliding in this disk produces temperatures in the millions of degrees, emitting lethal doses of radiation. An object falling through this zone would face intense thermal bombardment, vaporizing its outer layers before the gravitational gradient becomes the primary mechanism of destruction. However, if the entity is dormant, like the supermassive black hole at the center of our galaxy, this fiery barrier is absent. The descent is cold, dark, and perfectly silent, allowing the pure mechanics of gravity to operate without the chaotic interference of superheated plasma. In this silent vacuum, the structural integrity of the falling object is the only variable tested against the curvature of space-time. The test is absolute, and the failure is inevitable. To understand the profundity of this failure, one must consider the hierarchy of the four fundamental forces that govern the universe. Survey, paradoxically, is the weakest of the four forces. It is vastly overpowered by electromagnetism, which holds solid objects together, and the strong and weak nuclear forces which bind atomic nuclei. You overcome the gravitational pull of the entire Earth simply by picking up a small object from the ground. Your muscles, driven by electromagnetic chemical reactions, easily defeat the gravitational mass of a planet. But a black hole represents the ultimate subversion of this universal hierarchy. It is the environment where gravity concentrates its power geometrically until it overwhelms and shatters the other three forces. Spaghettification is the observable manifestation of gravity conquering electromagnetism and the strong nuclear force. When the tidal forces stretch a molecule until its atomic bonds break, that is the exact moment gravity overpowers the electromagnetic force that dictates chemistry. When the tidal forces stretch an atom until its nucleus fractures, that is the exact moment gravity overpowers the strong nuclear force that dictates atomic stability. The entity at the center of the galaxy is not merely a heavy object. It is a localized zone where the rules governing the stability of matter are entirely rewritten, and gravity establishes absolute dominion over all physical structures. The transition from macroscopic structure to a stream of subatomic particles is an irreversible journey down the entropy gradient. It represents the ultimate mechanical processing of matter. When the single-file string of isolated protons, neutrons, and electrons finally touches the mathematical boundary of the event horizon, it crosses a threshold that completely insulates it from the rest of the cosmos. The event horizon is not a physical surface. It is not a wall or a membrane made of any material substance. It is a region defined purely by mathematics, a set of coordinates in space and time where the inward flow of gravity accelerates beyond the constant speed of light. Because the particles are now moving through space that is collapsing inward faster than light can travel outward, their trajectory is locked. Every possible path forward, every mathematical vector available to those particles points exclusively inward toward the singularity. In a normal environment, an object can move up, down, left, right, forward, or backward. Inside the event horizon, the geometric concept of direction collapses. The singularity ceases to be merely a point in space. It becomes an inevitable moment in the future of the particles. Moving toward the center is no longer a spatial direction, it is as unavoidable as tomorrow. The stream of matter is dragged toward this point of zero volume, where the known laws of physics completely break down, ending the physical narrative of the object in total, absolute compression. To understand the true majesty and the profound existential terror of this cosmic environment, one must completely discard the most deeply ingrained assumption of human existence, the belief in an absolute, universal flow of time. From our terrestrial perspective, time is a constant, unyielding metronome. It ticks away uniformly for everyone, measuring the span of our lives in rigid, objective seconds, hours, and years. We assume that a moment passing on Earth is the exact same moment passing in the deepest voids of intergalactic space. This assumption is a comforting illusion, a localized deception born from our existence in a remarkably weak and uniform gravitational field. The architecture of reality, dictated by general relativity, reveals a far more unsettling truth. Time and space are not separate, static stages upon which the events of the universe play out. They are interwoven into a single, dynamic fabric known as space-time. And this fabric is malleable. It bends, it stretches, and it aggressively distorts under the influence of mass. Where gravity is intensely concentrated, the very flow of time is forcefully restricted. This phenomenon is mathematically defined as gravitational time dilation, and at the edge of a supermassive black hole, it ceases to be a microscopic anomaly and becomes a monumental severance of reality, creating two entirely valid yet utterly contradictory versions of the universe. To comprehend this fracture in reality, one must first adopt the perspective of a distant, stationary observer stationed safely far away from the gravitational well of the entity at the galactic center. Imagine watching a brave, or perhaps doomed, traveler descending directly toward the black hole, continuously transmitting a regular pulse of light, one flash every single second, to signal their progress. Initially, as the traveler begins their descent from a vast distance, the flashes arrive at the observer's location with perfect regularity. 1 second, one flash. The timeline of the observer and the timeline of the traveler are synchronized. However, as the traveler plunges deeper into the gravitational funnel, the curvature of space-time begins to exert its profound influence. The light emitted by the traveler's beacon must fight against an incredibly steep gravitational gradient to climb out of the well and reach the distant observer. This cosmic struggle takes a toll on the light itself. To the stationary observer, the interval between the flashes begins to stretch. The signal that was once transmitting every second suddenly takes 2 seconds to arrive, then an hour, then a week, then a year. The observer is watching the traveler's localized time grind to an excruciating halt. It is vital to understand that this is not an optical illusion or a mechanical failure of the traveler's equipment. To the rest of the universe, the traveler is fundamentally aging slower. Their physical movements appear sluggish, like a cinematic frame rate slowing down to a crawl. As the traveler continues to approach the absolute boundary, the mathematical precipice of the event horizon, this temporal distortion reaches its infinite extreme. The light, struggling to escape the gravity well, loses immense amounts of energy in the process. Because the speed of light remains strictly constant, this loss of energy does not cause the light to slow down. Instead, it forces the wavelength of the light to stretch out. This physical stretching of photons is known as gravitational redshift. As the observer watches the falling traveler, the light bouncing off their body shifts from the visible spectrum into the red, then descends rapidly into infrared, microwaves, and finally into faint radio waves. The image of the traveler becomes impossibly dim and profoundly red. But the most chilling aspect of this external perspective is what happens exactly at the event horizon. From the vantage point of the distant observer, the traveler never actually crosses the threshold. Because time at the event horizon is infinitely dilated relative to the outside universe, the final second before crossing is stretched into an eternity. The observer will watch the image of the traveler freeze entirely, plastered like a ghostly, fading photograph against the spherical shadow of the black hole. The rest of the cosmos will carry on. Stars will be born and die. Entire galaxies will collide and merge over billions of years, but the image of the falling traveler will remain suspended there forever, slowly fading into undetectable radio silence, but never mathematically crossing the line. To the outside world, the event horizon is a realm of frozen eternity. Yet this perfectly valid physical reality is entirely contradicted by the subjective experience of the traveler making the descent. For the individual falling into the gravitational abyss, the localized experience of time remains completely uninterrupted and ruthlessly normal. If the traveler looks at their own wristwatch, the seconds tick by with standard uniform precision. Their heart beats at a normal rhythm. Their biological processes and neurological functions do not perceive any localized slowing down. They are riding the inward flow of space-time, and within their own frame of reference, everything is functioning exactly as it always has. There is no physical jolt, no warning siren, and no palpable barrier when they actually cross the event horizon. Because the event horizon is not a physical membrane, but a mathematical point of no return, a traveler crossing it in a supermassive black hole, where the tidal forces are gentle enough at the boundary to allow a physical body to survive the crossing intact, would not even realize they have been severed from the rest of the universe. They would fall through the boundary in a matter of completely ordinary, subjective seconds. The sheer insidiousness of relativity is that it allows the traveler to cross a line in a few heartbeats that the rest of the universe believes takes an eternity to reach. However, the true psychological and philosophical horror of the traveler's perspective is revealed not by looking inward toward the crushing singularity, but by turning around and looking backward, out into the cosmos they are leaving behind. Just as gravity stretches the light trying to escape the black hole, it violently compresses the light falling into it. As the traveler approaches and crosses the event horizon, they are essentially intercepting the light of the outside universe that is continuously raining down into the gravity well. Because the traveler's own localized time is running incredibly slow, compared to the time of the external universe, they witness the external universe operating at an exponentially accelerated rate. The traveler is subjected to a phenomenon of extreme gravitational blue shift, where the incoming light is compressed into highly energetic, lethal frequencies of X-rays and gamma rays. But looking past the blinding radiation, if one could somehow perceive the visual information, the traveler would witness the ultimate temporal fast-forward. They would watch the orbital dance of planets and stars accelerate into a frantic, blurred frenzy. They would see the slow, majestic rotation of the Milky Way galaxy spin up like a top. The evolution of star clusters, a process that takes billions of terrestrial years, would unfold in mere fractions of a second. They would watch new stars ignite and detonate in rapid succession like firecrackers. As they fall deeper, the acceleration of external time approaches infinity. In the fleeting moments before the inevitable tidal forces of the singularity finally overcome their physical structure, the traveler is granted a terrifying, godlike vantage point of cosmic history. They would watch the agonizingly slow processes of the universe's evolution play out to their absolute conclusion. They would see the last stars in the cosmos exhaust their fuel and flicker out, plunging the universe into the dark era. They would witness the slow evaporation of distant galaxies, the decay of atomic matter, and the relentless march of entropy until the entire external universe reaches its ultimate heat death, a state of maximum disorder and zero thermodynamic energy. The traveler, trapped in a rapidly collapsing pocket of space-time, outlives the entire universe from a temporal perspective, watching the cosmos die before their very eyes, while their own watch ticks away just a few ordinary seconds. This profound disconnect forces humanity to confront a deeply unsettling philosophical question regarding the nature of truth and reality. We have two observers, both obeying the strict, unbreakable laws of physics, yet they experience two completely incompatible narratives. The observer on the outside is absolutely correct in stating that the traveler never crossed the horizon and is frozen in time forever. The traveler on the inside is absolutely correct in stating that they crossed the horizon instantly and watched the outside universe age into oblivion. Which perspective is the definitive truth? The disturbing answer provided by modern astrophysics is that there is no singular, universal truth. The black hole does not just trap light and crush matter, it shatters the consensus of reality. It enforces a strict segregation of information, permanently sealing off one timeline from another. The event horizon stands as the ultimate cosmic censor, a boundary where the concept of now completely loses its meaning. To speak of what is happening inside a black hole right now is a fundamentally flawed statement, because your now and the black hole's now can never be reconciled. We are left looking into the absolute darkness at the center of our galaxy, knowing that it holds a realm where time itself is folded, broken, and weaponized. A place that silently mocks our desperate need for a shared, objective reality. To fully comprehend the impending crisis that black holes present to our understanding of reality, one must step away from the macroscopic world of crushing gravity and immense stellar masses, and instead examine the microscopic, invisible foundation of the universe. At the very core of modern physics lies a principle so sacred, so utterly non-negotiable, that the entirety of our scientific knowledge rests upon its absolute validity. This is the law of quantum information conservation. In our everyday experience, we believe that things can be permanently destroyed. If a detailed handwritten journal containing the profound secrets of a lifetime is thrown into a roaring fire, the pages burn, the ink disintegrates, and to the human eye, the information is lost forever. But physics dictates a radically different reality. The universe operates as an infinite, flawless ledger. When that journal burns, the specific arrangement of atoms, the unique quantum states of the carbon, oxygen, and hydrogen that comprise the paper and ink do not simply cease to exist. They are violently rearranged into smoke, ash, and thermal radiation. The fundamental rules of quantum mechanics guarantee that if one possessed a supercomputer of unimaginable, godlike power, they could track every single photon of light emitted by the fire, measure the exact trajectory of every molecule of smoke dispersing into the atmosphere, and precisely calculate the kinetic energy of every particle of ash. By running those calculations backward, following the unbreakable chain of cause and effect, one could perfectly reconstruct the original journal down to the subatomic level. The physical object is destroyed, but the unique quantum footprint, the precise mathematical description of its state, is immortal. This conservation of information is what allows the universe to be deterministic. It guarantees that the past and the future are irrevocably linked. Without this principle, the fundamental equations of quantum mechanics would collapse, probabilities would fail to align, and the universe would be exposed as a chaotic, unpredictable void where things happen without cause. For decades, the scientific consensus held that black holes, despite their extreme gravitational environments, strictly adhered to this fundamental law. According to classical general relativity, a black hole is the ultimate cosmic vault. When a physical object, Whether it is a drifting asteroid, a cloud of interstellar dust, or a dying star crosses the event horizon, it is pulled inexorably toward the central singularity. The classical theory, popularized by the physicist John Archibald Wheeler, famously stated that black holes have no hair. This metaphor implies that an external observer can only ever measure three macroscopic properties of a black hole: its total mass, its electrical charge, and its angular momentum, or the speed at which it spins. Every other distinguishing characteristic of the matter it consumed, the chemical composition, the molecular structure, the specific quantum states, is completely stripped away from the observable universe. If you were to drop a star made entirely of pure hydrogen and a star made entirely of solid iron into a black hole, the resulting entity would only register the addition of mass. The universe outside the event horizon is permanently blinded to the nature of what fell inside. However, this absolute censorship did not violate the sacred law of quantum information. Physicists comforted themselves with the logical assumption that the information was not truly destroyed. It was simply locked away in a realm beyond our reach. The quantum ledger of the universe remained balanced, safely hidden within the infinite density of the singularity. The black hole was viewed as an eternal, static monument, a permanent gravitational scar on the fabric of space-time that would hold its trapped secrets forever. This comforting, orderly perspective was entirely shattered in 1974 by the theoretical work of a young physicist named Stephen Hawking. Hawking sought to understand what happens when the smooth, continuous mathematics of general relativity are forced to interact with the chaotic, probabilistic rules of quantum mechanics precisely at the boundary of the event horizon. To understand his revolutionary conclusion, one must accept that the vacuum of space is entirely misunderstood by human perception. Empty space is not empty. When we remove all stars, all planets, all gas clouds, and all stray photons, the remaining void is not a sterile expanse of nothingness. According to quantum field theory, the fundamental fabric of the vacuum is a boiling, turbulent sea of microscopic energy fluctuations. Subatomic particles are constantly borrowing infinitesimal amounts of energy from the universe to spontaneously pop into existence. They never appear alone. They are always born in pairs, a particle and its corresponding antiparticle. These virtual pairs spring into reality, exist for a fraction of a nanosecond, and then violently collide, annihilating each other and returning their borrowed energy back to the vacuum. This microscopic frenzy is happening continuously, in every cubic millimeter of space throughout the entire cosmos. It is a perfect, symmetrical dance of creation and destruction that perfectly balances the energy debt of the universe. Hawking directed his mathematical scrutiny toward what occurs when this quantum dance takes place directly on the razor-thin boundary of a black hole's event horizon. Here, the extreme curvature of space-time severely disrupts the symmetry of the vacuum. When a pair of virtual particles spontaneously materializes exactly on the precipice of the event horizon, the immense gravitational gradient, the tidal forces that pull relentlessly inward, can act upon the pair before they have the opportunity to annihilate one another. The geometry of this space dictates a brutal separation. One particle of the pair materializes just millimeters inside the mathematical boundary of the event horizon, while its partner materializes just millimeters outside. The inner particle is instantly and permanently dragged down into the singularity, trapped forever by a gravitational well from which not even light can escape. But the outer particle, finding itself just outside the point of no return, is violently accelerated outward into the surrounding space. It escapes the black hole, fleeing into the vastness of the cosmos as a real observable particle. However, the universe is governed by strict accounting. Energy cannot simply be created out of nothing. The escaped particle possesses real, positive energy, which means the universe is now running an energy deficit. To balance the cosmic ledger, the particle that fell into the black hole must possess negative energy. As this negative energy particle plunges into the singularity, it mathematically subtracts a microscopic fraction of energy from the black hole's total mass. Through this relentless subatomic process, the black hole is effectively emitting radiation. It is glowing, albeit incredibly faintly, with a steady stream of escaping particles. This phenomenon, now universally known as Hawking radiation, forces a profound and disturbing paradigm shift in our understanding of the cosmos. Black holes are not entirely black. They are not eternal, static monuments. They are thermodynamic entities that have a temperature. They leak radiation, and as a direct consequence, they are slowly, agonizingly evaporating. The mechanics of this evaporation process are deeply unintuitive. In everyday thermodynamics, a larger fire burns hotter and consumes its fuel faster. But the thermodynamic profile of a black hole operates in reverse. The temperature of a black hole is inversely proportional to its mass. A supermassive giant, like the silent entity residing in the center of the Milky Way, possesses such an immense gravitational field that the curvature of space-time at its event horizon is relatively gentle compared to smaller black holes. This gentle curve produces incredibly weak Hawking radiation. Its temperature is just a minuscule fraction of a degree above absolute zero, making it significantly colder than the ambient cosmic microwave background radiation that permeates the universe. Currently, these supermassive entities are actually absorbing more energy from the surrounding starlight and background radiation than they are emitting. They are still growing. But the universe is expanding, and as it expands, it cools. Deep in the unimaginable future, long after the last star in the cosmos has exhausted its nuclear fuel and faded into a cold ember, the ambient temperature of the universe will eventually drop below the microscopic temperature of these supermassive black holes. Only then will the balance shift. At that distant epoch, trillions upon trillions of years from now, the black holes will become the only sources of heat in a dead universe. They will begin to radiate their mass away into the freezing void. It is a process of agonizing slowness. For a black hole with the mass of our Sun, the time required to evaporate entirely is a number so vast it renders human comprehension obsolete. A 1 followed by 67 zeros in years. For the supermassive giants, the timeline extends to a 1 followed by 100 zeros. Yet the relentless mathematics dictate that this slow bleeding is inevitable. As the black hole gradually loses mass over these incomprehensible eons, its physical size shrinks. As it shrinks, the curvature of space-time at its horizon becomes sharper, more extreme. This steeper gradient accelerates the separation of virtual particles, causing the Hawking radiation to intensify. The black hole grows hotter. The emission of particles speeds up. What begins as a microscopic leak slowly accelerates into a steady stream, then a torrent. In the final, fleeting moments of its life, the black hole will have shrunk to a subatomic speck, blazing with an infinite temperature. It will expend its remaining mass in a sudden, catastrophic detonation of high-energy gamma rays, a final flash of brilliance illuminating the dark, empty cosmos before winking out of existence entirely. The ultimate cosmic vault, the absolute gravitational prison, is systematically dismantled by the microscopic fluctuations of the quantum vacuum. The entity that was mathematically proven to trap everything eternally is eventually erased, leaving absolutely nothing behind but an expanding sphere of random, chaotic thermal radiation. And it is precisely in this total, absolute erasure that the ultimate paradox is born. The evaporation of a black hole is not merely an act of celestial destruction. It is the catalyst for the most profound crisis in the history of modern physics. When that final, blinding flash of gamma radiation dissipates into the freezing void, leaving absolutely nothing behind, it triggers a paradox that threatens to unravel the very fabric of our understanding. To grasp the terror of this moment, we must return to the unbreakable law established earlier, the conservation of quantum information. The universe is supposed to be a flawless ledger, a system where the past can always be reconstructed from the present. When a star collapses or a planet is swallowed, the unique quantum states of every single atom, the precise spin of every electron, and the complex molecular history of that matter are dragged across the event horizon. For decades, physicists accepted this, believing the information was safely locked away in the singularity. But Stephen Hawking's revelation of evaporation destroys the vault. Over incomprehensible eons, the black hole steadily bleeds its mass away into space through a continuous stream of subatomic particles. But here's the catastrophic flaw in that process. The Hawking radiation is entirely, fundamentally random. It is pure thermal noise. It carries absolutely no structural imprint of the matter that originally fell into the black hole. If you were to throw a television, a block of solid gold, and a human being into a black hole, the mathematical equations governing Hawking radiation dictate that the particles eventually emitted back out into the cosmos would be perfectly identical in their chaotic, random distribution. The radiation is completely indifferent to the history of the black hole. It possesses a temperature, but it possesses no memory. It is a cosmic eraser. When the black hole finally shrinks to nothingness and disappears, what happens to the unfathomable amount of quantum information it swallowed over trillions of years? The physical vault is gone. The singularity is gone. All that remains is an expanding sphere of featureless, chaotic heat that contains no data whatsoever. If this is true, if the radiation does not secretly encode the history of the consumed matter, then the quantum information has not merely been hidden or scrambled. It has been permanently, irrevocably deleted from existence. This is the quantum information paradox, and it is a concept so deeply unsettling that it has sparked a theoretical war among the greatest minds in physics. If information can be truly erased, the foundational bedrock of quantum mechanics collapses. The mathematics that govern the behavior of subatomic particles, the equations that ensure the stability of the atoms in your body, rely entirely on the principle of unitarity. Unitarity is the mathematical guarantee that the sum of all probabilities in a quantum system always equals 1. It is the strict mathematical rule that ensures the universe makes logical sense, that an event leads to an outcome, and that an outcome can be traced perfectly back to a specific event. If information is lost inside an evaporating black hole, unitarity is violated. The probabilities no longer add up. The strict, unyielding chain of cause and effect that governs the cosmos is violently severed. This is not a mere accounting error on a cosmic scale. It is the absolute death of determinism. Determinism is the philosophical and scientific conviction that the state of the universe at any given moment completely dictates the state of the universe at the next exact moment. It is what allows a scientist to predict a solar eclipse centuries in advance. But if a black hole can function as a true deletion mechanism, absorbing structured reality and spitting out unstructured static, then the universe suffers from a localized, irreversible amnesia. The implications of this cosmic amnesia extend far beyond the abstract realm of theoretical physics. They strike at the very heart of human existence and the nature of reality itself. We move through our lives operating under the deep-seated assumption that our past is real, permanent, and etched into the history of the cosmos. We believe that the events that transpired yesterday, the civilizations that rose and fell millennia ago, and the evolutionary path of our species leave an indelible mark on the physical universe. But the evaporating black hole presents a terrifying counterargument. If a physical entity within the universe possesses the capability to completely wipe out the quantum blueprint of matter, then the past is not a permanent fixture. It is vulnerable. It can be unwritten. If you trace the chain of causality backward from the random static of Hawking radiation, you hit a dead end. The timeline simply stops. The universe looks at the space where a star once existed, where a planet once orbited, and finds a completely blank slate. The mathematical link between what was and what is has been permanently shattered. To understand how desperate the scientific community is to avoid this conclusion, one must look at the extreme theories proposed to save the universe from this loophole. Physicists introduced the concept of quantum entanglement at the event horizon. When the virtual particle pair is violently separated by gravity, the particle that escapes and the particle that falls inward remain mysteriously connected, or entangled. Their quantum states are linked regardless of distance. However, for the escaping Hawking radiation to carry the information of the dead star away, it must also be entangled with all the radiation that the black hole emitted in the past. But quantum mechanics strictly forbids this. A particle cannot be fully entangled with two completely independent separate systems at the exact same time. A rule known as the monogamy of entanglement. The universe forces a choice. To save the information, the quantum bond between the falling particle and the escaping particle must be violently, forcefully snapped. Breaking a quantum bond of that magnitude would release an incomprehensible amount of localized energy. It would create a literal wall of blazing, high-energy plasma exactly at the event horizon, a phenomenon physicists call the firewall. But if a firewall exists, it completely destroys Albert Einstein's theory of general relativity, which strictly dictates that the event horizon is an invisible, empty threshold where nothing special happens to a falling observer. The universe places us in a terrifying logical trap. You must either destroy the foundation of quantum mechanics by allowing information to be erased, or you must destroy the foundation of gravity by erecting a wall of fire that burns relativity to the ground. The two pillars of human knowledge, the theories that built our entire modern understanding of the cosmos, are engaged in a fatal, irreconcilable contradiction at the edge of the abyss. This severing of cause and effect introduces a chilling existential dread. If the fundamental laws of physics allow for the complete deletion of information, then the rules governing reality are not universal truths. They are fragile, temporary guidelines that can be suspended or destroyed by the extreme gravity of a collapsed star. If the universe does not strictly enforce the preservation of its own history, then there is no physical law guaranteeing the stability of the present moment. We are forced to confront the horrifying possibility that the structural integrity of our reality is a localized illusion. The solid ground beneath our feet, the complex biological machinery of our brains, and the vast, intricate web of galaxies spinning in the dark are all constructs of quantum information. We are, at our core, highly organized patterns of data. If the universe harbors mechanisms that can effortlessly and permanently erase this data, then existence itself is inherently precarious. The philosophical weight of this paradox implies that the cosmos is not a closed, perfectly functioning system, but a leaky vessel where reality itself can simply drain away into nothingness. If the information is truly lost, if the black hole functions as an ultimate cosmic shredder, then we must accept that the universe is not a secure vault of history, but a transient, unstable stage where the script can be deleted mid-performance. We are left staring into the absolute void, realizing that the dark, silent entity residing at the center of the Milky Way is not just a gravitational threat to our solar system, it is an existential threat to the very concept of reality. It stands as a terrifying monument to the fragility of existence, a silent reminder that everything we are, everything we have ever known, and every memory the universe holds can be mathematically annihilated, leaving behind a cold, expanding cosmos that does not even remember we were here. When the universe presents a paradox that threatens to dismantle the foundation of quantum physics and erase the history of matter itself, the solution often lies hidden within the exact equations that first illuminated the problem. The dark, absolute finality of the black hole, the ultimate cosmic incinerator of information, is derived entirely from the framework of general relativity. Yet, Albert Einstein's majestic mathematical architecture contains a hidden symmetry, a profound reflection built into the core of its geometry that offers a violent, mind-bending exit from the abyss. To uncover this hidden reality, one must examine a fundamental property of classical physics known as time reversal symmetry. Throughout the macroscopic universe, the fundamental laws of motion and gravity are entirely indifferent to the direction of time. If one were to meticulously record the orbit of a planet revolving around a massive star and play the footage in reverse, the reversed motion would perfectly obey the exact same gravitational laws as the forward motion. The mathematics do not care whether time flows into the future or into the past. General relativity is governed by this exact same strict chronological indifference. The complex tensor equations that describe the catastrophic inward collapse of a giant star, the violent folding of space-time, and the formation of an inescapable event horizon are mathematically completely reversible. If a theoretical physicist takes the exact mathematical model of a black hole and strictly reverses the flow of time within the calculations, the mathematics do not break down or produce an error. Instead, they produce a perfectly valid, flawlessly logical, and entirely opposite physical structure. The equations generate the exact reflection of absolute darkness, a theoretical entity known in astrophysics as a white hole. If a black hole is the ultimate cosmic drain, an entity of absolute attraction that traps everything and allows absolutely nothing to escape, then the white hole is its exact mathematical inverse, the ultimate cosmic fountain. It is an entity of absolute, unyielding repulsion. The geometry of space-time surrounding a white hole is warped just as severely as that of a black hole, but the temporal vector is inverted. Inside the event horizon of a black hole, space itself flows inward toward the central singularity faster than the speed of light, making escape physically impossible for any object or radiation. Conversely, at the mathematical boundary of a white hole, the fabric of space-time is violently and perpetually expanding outward from the center, at speeds exceeding the cosmic speed limit. Therefore, the event horizon of a white hole functions as a one-way membrane of absolute exclusion. Nothing in the entire cosmos, no stray asteroid, no highly energetic beam of gamma radiation, and no advanced theoretical spacecraft can ever cross that threshold to enter the interior. Even if an object were propelled directly toward a white hole at 99.9% the speed of light, the outward flow of the spatial geometry would relentlessly repel it. The object would be fighting against the fundamental fabric of reality flowing in the opposite direction. It is an impenetrable sphere of outgoing energy, a hyperluminous geyser continuously and violently expelling matter and radiation from its core into the surrounding universe. For decades, white holes were dismissed by the conservative scientific establishment as mere mathematical artifacts, bizarre parlor tricks of calculus that had no bearing on physical reality. They were considered too unstable, too geometrically chaotic to actually form and persist in the natural universe. However, as theoretical physicists dug deeper into the geometry of the singularity, a profound connection began to emerge, linking the ultimate devourer and the ultimate creator into a single, unified cosmic mechanism. In the year 1935, Albert Einstein and his colleague Nathan Rosen published a groundbreaking paper that fundamentally altered the perception of the singularity. They discovered that the point of infinite density at the center of a black hole does not necessarily have to be a dead end where space and time simply cease to exist. By mapping the extreme curvature of space-time, they demonstrated that the bottom of the black hole's gravitational funnel could mathematically puncture through the fabric of reality and connect to another distant region of space-time. The inescapable funnel of the black hole and the erupting funnel of a white hole could be seamlessly joined back to back. This mathematical structure is officially called the Einstein-Rosen bridge, though it is universally recognized in modern culture by a far more evocative name: a wormhole. To comprehend the architecture of an Einstein-Rosen bridge, one must entirely abandon the intuitive concept of a flat, linear, three-dimensional universe and embrace the existence of a higher dimensional space, often referred to by theoretical physicists as the bulk or hyperspace. The universe we observe, with its billions of stars, vast galaxies, and unfathomable distances, can be conceptualized as a two-dimensional surface of an infinite rubber sheet, undulating and bending under the immense weight of massive objects. A supermassive black hole creates an infinitely deep, narrow gravity well, pulling the rubber sheet down into a sharp, extreme spike. But the universe is not rigidly flat in the higher dimensions. It possesses the geometric capability to fold over onto itself. If the cosmic rubber sheet is folded, the bottom of that black hole spike can reach down through the hyperspace bulk and touch a completely different, vastly distant section of the cosmic sheet. When a puncture occurs at this exact point of contact, a continuous tube is formed, completely bypassing the normal linear space separating the two distinct locations. This tube is the wormhole. It is a literal tunnel carved through the higher dimensional bulk, providing a physical, albeit terrifying, shortcut across the cosmos. One end of this tunnel is the mouth of the black hole, inhaling stellar matter and stray light with inescapable gravitational fury. The throat of the tunnel is the Einstein-Rosen bridge, channeling the infinitely compressed remnants of that matter outside the boundaries of normal observable space. The opposite end of the tunnel is the mouth of the white hole, violently vomiting the processed matter, plasma, and radiation back out into the universe. This elegant, highly symmetrical architecture provides a sudden and breathtaking theoretical solution to the quantum information paradox that threatened to destroy the foundations of modern physics. If an evaporating black hole simply deletes the quantum information of the matter it consumes into thermal static, reality loses its logical, deterministic foundation. But if every black hole is fundamentally connected to a corresponding white hole via a localized tear in space-time, the information is never actually erased from existence. It is merely exported. The unique quantum signature of a dying star, the intricate molecular data of a destroyed planet, and the precise atomic sequence of every physical object dragged across the dark event horizon are not crushed into permanent nothingness. They are violently compressed into a stream of pure quantum data, funneled through the chaotic, unobservable throat of the wormhole and blasted out of the corresponding white hole. The black hole is no longer viewed as a cosmic shredder. It operates as an extreme cosmic transit hub. The ledger of the universe remains perfectly balanced. No quantum data is truly lost, but the information has been aggressively relocated to a completely different coordinate in space and time, completely inaccessible to the original observer. However, the physical reality of navigating this bridge presents a scenario of unimaginable mechanical horror. While the mathematics elegantly predict the existence of the wormhole, they simultaneously predict its immediate, violent self-destruction. The throat of an Einstein-Rosen bridge is inherently, profoundly unstable. It is not a rigid concrete tunnel, shielded from the forces of the cosmos. It is composed of warped, severely fluctuating space-time, and it is constantly under the overwhelming influence of the black hole's immense, crushing gravity. The very moment the theoretical connection between the black hole and the white hole is established, the gravity of the singularity instantly tries to pull the walls of the throat inward. The tunnel mathematically collapses in upon itself at a speed faster than the speed of light. It pinches off and severs the connection entirely before even a single photon of light, let alone a physical structure or biological organism, could possibly traverse the vast distance from the dark entrance to the luminous exit. Any matter caught inside the throat during this instantaneous catastrophic collapse would be crushed into a singularity, suffering the exact fate the bridge was meant to avoid. To keep the throat open, to theoretically prevent the walls of space-time from slamming shut and crushing everything inside, the bridge would need to be artificially supported by an infusion of exotic matter. This is a purely theoretical substance possessing negative mass and negative gravity, properties that have never been observed in the natural universe. This exotic matter would theoretically generate an immense repulsive force, pushing aggressively against the crushing weight of the black hole and propping the tunnel open just long enough for quantum information and physical material to pass through the void. Astronomers and theoretical astrophysicists have scoured the deep cosmos, searching the cosmic microwave background and tracking high-energy events in a desperate attempt to find the observational signature of a white hole. Because a white hole violently ejects matter and radiation, it would appear to a distant observer as an incomprehensibly bright transient explosion, suddenly dumping the mass of an entire solar system into the dark void in a matter of days or hours before fading away. Some controversial physicists have suggested that some of the most violent, unexplained phenomena in the universe, such as certain gamma-ray bursts, brief, blinding flashes of high-energy radiation that randomly illuminate the distant universe with the energy output of billions of suns, might not merely be the collisions of hyperdense neutron stars. They hypothesize that these unimaginable flashes of light might be the fleeting, violent eruptions of white holes, temporarily expelling the condensed contents of a collapsed wormhole into our visible universe. The existence of this symmetrical architecture forces humanity to confront a universe that is far more interconnected, chaotic, and geometrically terrifying than our localized perspective allows us to perceive. The supermassive black hole at the center of the Milky Way, slowly spinning in the dark, might not be a silent, final tomb for everything it consumes. It may be the immense, invisible intake valve of an ancient, functioning cosmic engine. The matter it patiently pulls from our galactic neighborhood is ruthlessly stripped of its macroscopic form, reduced to a raw stream of subatomic data and fired continuously through a rupture in reality itself, destined to violently erupt from a blinding white hole located billions of light-years away across the cosmos, or perhaps ejected into a completely different epoch of time altogether. The darkness at the core of our galaxy is not an endpoint. It is a violent, churning thoroughfare hidden behind an impenetrable mathematical veil, actively pumping the building blocks of reality through the hidden arteries of the universe. Let us examine the absolute beginning of everything we know, the ultimate genesis point of our reality. The established scientific consensus dictates that approximately 13.8 billion years ago, the entirety of existence, all matter, all energy, the fundamental forces of nature, and the very fabric of space and time itself, was compressed into a single geometric singularity of infinite density and infinite temperature. Then, in an event universally referred to as the Big Bang, this singularity violently expanded outward. It is crucial to understand that this was not a conventional explosion expanding into a pre-existing empty room. The expansion created the room. It generated space itself, hurling raw thermal energy and subatomic particles into the newly forged void, eventually cooling over eons to form the intricate cosmic web of galaxies, star clusters, and planetary systems we observe today. However, when theoretical physicists lay the rigorous mathematical framework of the Big Bang directly over the mathematical framework of a white hole, a chilling, undeniable realization emerges from the equations. The two mathematical models are not merely similar, they are practically indistinguishable. A white hole is defined by general relativity as a singularity that violently erupts outward, expelling matter and intense radiation into a newly expanding region of spacetime, bounded by an event horizon that absolutely forbids any material or light from entering. The Big Bang is the exact same geometric and thermodynamic event. The origin of our cosmos does not merely resemble the theoretical behavior of a white hole. Strictly according to the mathematics of Einstein's theory, the Big Bang was a white hole. This profound physical equivalence suggests that the birth of our universe was not a spontaneous, miraculous explosion originating from absolute, uncaused nothingness. It was a mechanical, inevitable expulsion of ultra-compressed energy from a pre-existing, hypermassive source. If the Big Bang was a white hole, then the unyielding logic of the Einstein-Rosen bridge demands the existence of a corresponding black hole on the other side of that primordial singularity. The incomprehensible mass and radiant energy that ignited our entire universe must have been violently pulled in from a prior, entirely separate reality, funneling through the throat of a higher-dimensional wormhole before erupting into the void to construct our space and our time. This logical progression leads directly into a revolutionary hypothesis proposed by theoretical physicist Lee Smolin, known as cosmological natural selection. This hypothesis completely dismantles the traditional notion of a sterile, slowly decaying cosmos and replaces it with a universe that closely mimics the fundamental driving imperative of biological life: reproduction. According to this framework, a black hole is not a cosmic graveyard, and it is not a permanent incinerator of quantum information. It is a cosmic seed. When a massive star exhausts its nuclear fuel, collapses under its own crushing weight, and forms a singularity, the intense gravitational pressure does not simply crush the matter into an infinite dead end. Instead, the fabric of spacetime reaches a critical, maximum threshold of quantum compression and then undergoes a violent, repulsive quantum bounce. It rebounds with unimaginable force, but because the event horizon strictly prevents this explosion from expanding outward back into the original universe, the bounce is forced to geometrically create a new, disconnected bubble of spacetime. A new baby universe is literally born inside the collapsing black hole, experiencing its own localized Big Bang. This newly forged universe expands infinitely, completely hidden behind the impenetrable, one-way wall of the event horizon, forever invisible and inaccessible to the parent universe that spawned it. Furthermore, the extreme, chaotic quantum fluctuations that occur during this violent process of compression and subsequent expansion would subtly alter the fundamental constants of physics during the birth. The absolute speed of light, the exact strength of the gravitational force, the precise mass of an electron, these parameters might be slightly tweaked in the new baby universe. If this new universe possesses the correct, balanced physical laws to form its own giant stars, those stars will eventually burn out and die, forming new black holes, which in turn will spawn more baby universes. The cosmos is no longer a single, isolated bubble. It becomes a vast, fractal, self-replicating structure, a sprawling multiverse, continuously prioritizing the creation of universes optimized for producing more black holes. To fully grasp the sheer existential weight of this concept, one must possess the intellectual courage to reverse the lens of observation entirely and look at our own localized reality. If the mathematics dictate that every black hole conceals a new, expanding universe within its event horizon, then we are logically forced to ask a terrifying, inevitable question about the fundamental nature of our own existence. Look at the vast, expanding architecture of the cosmos around us. We have arrogantly assumed, since the dawn of telescopic astronomy, that we are standing on the outside, observing the universe from a neutral, objective vantage point in free space. But if the Big Bang was the eruption of a white hole fed by a collapsing star in another dimension, then the absolute boundary of our universe is not an expanding edge of empty space, it is the interior wall of an event horizon. We are not on the outside looking in, we are on the inside looking out. There is a specific mathematical equation, originally derived by the physicist Carl Schwarzschild, that determines the exact radius of an event horizon based entirely on the total mass contained within it. If an astrophysicist calculates the estimated total mass of all the hundreds of billions of galaxies, the pervasive dark matter, and the ambient background energy contained within our observable universe, and plugs that staggering number into the Schwarzschild equation, the resulting radius matches the current observed radius of our universe with a precision that defies coincidence. This is not a mathematical anomaly that theoretical physicists can easily dismiss. The overall density and gravitational profile of our entire universe perfectly align with the mathematical profile of the interior of a hypermassive black hole. When astronomers point their most advanced deep space telescopes at the cosmic microwave background radiation, desperately attempting to peer at the furthest edges of observable space, they are not looking at the outer boundary of a free, uncontained reality. They might be looking directly at the internal curvature of a hyperdimensional event horizon. Light cannot escape our universe. It is bound by the curvature of our space-time, exactly as light is trapped within a black hole. Our entire universe, with its billions of swirling galaxies, its infinite biological and chemical complexities, and its 14 billion years of violent history, may exist entirely within the belly of a single supermassive black hole. We are anchored in a higher dimensional parent universe that we will never, under any mathematical or physical circumstances, be able to perceive, contact, or comprehend. This monumental shift in perspective completely redefines our relationship with the silent entity currently lurking at the center of the Milky Way. When we look toward the dense dust lanes of the constellation Sagittarius, we are not merely looking at a destructive gravitational anomaly or a sleeping predator waiting to consume our star system. Sagittarius A star, along with the billions of other supermassive black holes scattered across the cold galactic voids, are the reproductive organs of reality itself. They are the cosmic engines, tirelessly churning out new, unobservable universes in the dark, acting as the physical bridges between one reality and the next. The immense gravitational pull that dictates the frantic orbits of our central stars is merely a localized side effect of a much grander, interdimensional process of cosmic replication. Yet, despite this profound theoretical elegance, the immediate lived reality of our human existence remains deeply unsettling and inherently fragile. We are trapped in a microscopic, localized pocket of biological order, bounded by an event horizon that we cannot perceive, orbiting a dormant singularity that we cannot possibly control. The universe does not offer comforting assurances. It does not guarantee the preservation of our quantum information, and it does not provide objective, universal truths. It operates in a state of absolute, indifferent silence. The silence of the galactic core is not empty. It is heavy with the weight of physics pushed to its absolute breaking point, a quiet, unyielding reminder that human civilization is merely a temporary fluctuation of data, suspended precariously above an infinite gravitational abyss. The comforting illusions of a static, safe, and easily understood cosmos have been completely dismantled by the relentless progression of astrophysics. The dark spaces between the stars are not empty voids, but the shadows of monumental, hyperdimensional mechanisms operating entirely beyond the reach of human intervention. The truth is out there, quietly bending the light of distant stars, slowly evaporating into the freezing void over trillions of years, and violently giving birth to new realities in the absolute dark. The cosmos is awake, and it is endlessly, methodically devouring itself in order to survive. This concludes our current descent into the mechanics of the void. But the universe holds countless more terrifying secrets waiting to be mathematically deciphered in the shadows. We will continue to pull back the veil, discarding the comforting lies of conventional astronomy to expose the raw, unforgiving, and beautiful mechanics of reality. Until the next transmission, keep your eyes focused on the dark spaces between the stars, and never stop questioning the fundamental nature of the reality you are standing on. You have been listening to Dozing Universe.